Pixar! Everyone loves Pixar, and by everyone, I mean me. I like Pixar, especially young me. Young me loved Pixar. Where am I going with this? Young me was blessed with an Xbox 360, and I wanted only games based on my favorite movies. With how much I loved these games back then, I figured I would go back and look at some of these old games, as well as some of the games I haven't played before, to see if they still hold up today. They probably don't, but we'll see. Starting this list of games strong, we have WALL-E for the PSP, PS2, and PC. That's a lot of P's. Now, for WALL-E, as well as a lot of other games on this list, there were two versions of the game. There was the much more simplified version for PSP, PS2, and PC, as well as completely different versions for console on PS3, Xbox 360, and Wii. They were much newer and more advanced. In WALL-E's case, there were actually three versions: the PSP, PS2, and PC version, the Xbox, Wii, and PS3 version, as well as a DS version. It looks... yeah, it's best we skip this version. Both versions of the WALL-E video game follow the main events of the movie. WALL-E meets Eve, follows her to space, blah 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 blah, they rescue humanity. However, while the less advanced version of this game is, well, less advanced, I personally think it's the better version of the game. For starters, we get to see a lot more to the backstory of WALL-E, with a cutscene showing all the Axiom airliners leaving Earth, as well as when there were still WALL-E robots roaming the planet. Of course, that doesn't last long, because pretty soon, as soon as the game starts, in fact, we're finding dead WALL-E robots everywhere. Did I mention this game is dark? WALL-E full-on scales a destroyed skyscraper to try and communicate with another being after 700 years of being alone. And it's a dead body. And he's not even fazed by it either. He looks disappointed at best. It's like he was just used to seeing dead versions of himself, which, to be fair, there's a lot of dead WALL-Es just lying around. On the topic of being dark, don't even get me started on these creepy death animations. Look at this! If this doesn't scream disturbing, I don't know what does. All that aside, this is actually a really solid game. All the mechanics are pretty simple and are taught at the start of the game. You got your movement, your two projectiles in the form of your laser, as well as boxes that you can throw, a pretty lackluster jump. Like, come on, Wall, you can't miss leg day. Or wheel day. Do robots have muscles? While his jump sucks and is pretty useless most of the time, if you can jump off a ramp, or if you're able to get enough speed, you can actually jump really far distances. It's just that it's really hard to get WALL-E to go fast. What did I say about leg day? Your speed is indicated by this little bar in the bottom right. It's impossible to get to the maximum speed without either a ramp, a speed booster thing, or something along those lines. I found the best way to navigate was to spam his crouch ability. Is this even a crouch? By hitting circle on the controller, you could go into a little cube shape, like he does in the movies. It lets you get through small areas, avoid damage, and if done properly, you can gain speed. The controls are all really solid, especially on a controller. When I played this as a kid, I was playing on a PSP, which was really difficult to hold, to say the least. But on a proper controller, it was all very fluid. Although the camera controls were a bit weird at first, as I used the L2 and R2 buttons to control it, rather than the right stick for some reason, you get used to it pretty fast, and it actually works quite well. The controls in the fully upgraded version of this game on all the consoles were also really good and fluid, but I honestly think I prefer these controls better, even if the movement options aren't as wide. One thing that this version does significantly worse than the console counterpart is the graphics. These graphics were pretty freaking bad at sometimes. I mean, look at this. I'm being overdramatic here. These graphics are pretty decent for the most part. It's mostly the non-important things, such as the garbage and background stuff that have low quality. I always thought that the stuff in this game looks like when you would zoom in on landmarks through Google Earth, all low quality and polygonal. To be fair, I am playing on the PSP version of the game, which does have worse graphics than the PS2 and PC versions, but not by a lot. This game is also surprisingly long. It took me about 6 hours to complete overall, but to be fair, I could just be really bad at the game. I think it's a pretty well-known fact that I'm horrible at video games. Overall though, I really enjoyed this game, even putting nostalgia aside. My official rating of this game, not that anyone cares, is 7 out of 10. It's pretty good. Here is a game that I played with absolutely zero nostalgia. In fact, I didn't actually know this game existed until maybe a week ago. Monsters Incorporated for the PS2. Despite being on the same console as the last game, this one is significantly worse. Why does Sully look like that? I would say this game is good for its time, but when you compare it to other games from 2001, it really isn't. Back then, we had games like Smash Bros. Melee, GTA 3, Silent Hill 2, and on top of them all, yeah. Okay, let's actually start talking about the meat of this game. The game just follows the main events of the story, much like the other games, but something I did find interesting, or rather something the developers just did really lazily, is the cutscenes. Most of these old games have their own newly animated cutscenes, so while the cutscenes weren't nearly as good as how the movies looked, they at least fit in with the rest of the game. The developers of this game were so lazy that, instead of making new cutscenes, they just slapped random clips from the movie in. Now, that's not all bad, until you realize when the game first starts, you're greeted to all these nice cutscenes from the original movie. Gets your hopes up a bit, and then you're slapped in the face with this. I still can't get over this. I think to get the full experience, you just need to watch me and Liam's first reaction to this.
They put like a lot of thought into this video game.
The older Disney games actually had a lot of thought put into them.
Yeah.
Oh.
But oh no. Where did all the texture go?
Oh no.
Oh no.
Graphics aside, the game isn't that bad. The controls are pretty decent for the most part. All the mechanics are taught early on in the game, and they're used throughout. However, there is one thing I never really got past, and that's the camera controls. Something just felt really off about them. It never seemed like they were doing what you wanted them to do. One of the biggest issues I had with this game was the level design. The levels were often really confusing to navigate, and I found myself getting lost or not knowing where to go in the game. Of course, I'm also kind of stupid, but still. This game is made for kids, so if I can't figure it out a lot of the time, I'm guessing a kid can't either. I feel like this problem could be pretty easily resolved as well if they just added a mini-map of some sort to help you get around. Since I never played this as a kid, I have zero nostalgia for it, but despite how meh of a game it is, I do think that I would have loved it as a child. The levels are almost like an open world to give it many points, something I really loved when I was little, and something I'm sure many other kids enjoy too. Overall, pretty meh game today, but was probably pretty fun for kids. Probably like a 5 out of 10. Ugh, after that, I need to play a good game. Gotta get that awful taste in my mouth. Huh, this game has really good reviews. I'll play this, it's gotta be good. Dear God. Much like the WALL-E game, there were two versions of this Toy Story game. The handheld version for DS and the console version on PS3, Wii, and Xbox 360. Needless to say, one of these versions is significantly better than the other. Half of the DS version of this game uses the stylus. The graphics are horrible. The music makes me feel like I'm gonna go insane. Sorry about that. Yeah, despite having played the crap out of this as a child, I can't bring myself to play more than 20 minutes of this. I'm sure any kid in the 2010s would have loved it, but jeez. Anyways, now for the actually good version of this game. Toy Story 3 for console. This is probably the best game on this entire list. I honestly don't even know where to begin with this game. Everything about it is just good. The graphics are very appealing and still hold up very well to this day, more than 10 years later. The controls are all really solid, and the music is incredible, unlike the DS version. Starting off the game, we are thrown into a tutorial, where we play as Woody, going after Ham or Dr. Porkchop. This level acts as a good introduction, as it is easy enough for a new player to complete, but it still offers some challenge, albeit pretty minor. This level also teaches us about basically everything we'll need to know throughout the entire game. We have a charge attack for breaking weak objects, attacking enemies, or my personal favorite, beating the crap out of random NPCs. We have a projectile in the form of these Pixar balls, and we have a double jump, which is very useful and can be paired with a wall jump to get over some pretty far distances. Then we got other stuff, like this ground pound thing, but it's not really important because we basically never use it. This level is also the first of many of what I like to call imagination sequences, where basically we see the toys in the children's imagination. The game switches back and forth between this. So at one point we are seeing things as a kid would see it, with Woody traveling through outer space, and at another point we are simply trying to retrieve a phone from Andy's basement as the toys. I think this is a really smart thing to have, as it really differentiates the levels. My two favorite levels are easily the Buzz Lightyear level and the Bonnie's Imagination level. Let's talk about these levels, why don't we? Towards the beginning of the game, we get to play the Buzz Lightyear video game, seen in Toy Story 2. It just follows what happens in the opening to Toy Story 2, with Buzz Lightyear going after Zurg. I honestly think that this is one of the best parts of the entire game, and I'm really sad we didn't see more of it. I would love if Disney made a full Buzz Lightyear game, separate from Toy Story, because this is really good. This portion of the game is also very different from the rest. For one, we can hover, which is super useful at times. We also have Buzz's laser, rather than Pixar balls, which I much prefer over the balls because it can actually kill enemies, unlike the balls, which kind of just stun them. Then, of course, the charge attack, which is probably better than the laser because it's an instant kill usually. Then there's the Bonnie's Room level, where we are basically just seeing Bonnie's imagination as she plays with the toys. Her room gets filled with coffee as we are attacked by a witch thing, and pretty soon we're in outer space trying to power a rocket. You know, just your average day. But I think the thing that this game is best known for isn't actually the story mode, but rather the sandbox mode, Woody's Roundup. The best way of explaining this game mode is like better Animal Crossing. Basically, you start your own little western town, and you can play as either Woody, Jesse, or Buzz, but there's nothing different in this game mode aside from voice lines. There's a surprising amount of customization you can do in this game, and as you go throughout the game, as well as the story mode, you can unlock new pieces for your buildings, as well as clothes for your little villager things. They'll also give you missions, mostly little side quests, that you can do in your own town. You go on full journeys to destroy Zurich's fortress and steal a gun, destroy a dam so you have more room to build a school, do races with Bullseye, as well as cars, and so on and so on. This game overall is fantastic. I loved it as a kid, and playing it recently, nostalgia aside, it's still just fun to play. It holds up incredibly well, the controls are great, there's not really anything I can think that's bad about it. Overall, this is a solid 9 out of 10. And there we have it. As old as these games are, I think overall they hold up really well. Pixar put a lot of effort into the development of these games, and it shows. Even for the weaker games, they're still really fun to play. I really wish Pixar and Disney would go back to making games like this. Ever since Disney Interactive shut down a few years back, there just hasn't been anything similar. There's been a few Disney games here or there, sure, but they don't have that same charm that the old games have. I don't know what else to say. Video's done. Yeah.